It was a week of highs and lows in Indie Ball. Find out who's on the right track to success on this week's edition of the Indie Ball Report podcast. Back again, episode number 276 of the Indie Ball Report podcast. What are we looking at this week, Ryan?
We're running it back with a Kyle conversation. That's for sure.
We have another Kyle cast.
Quebec still hasn't lost since we last talked, so that's horrifying.
So is it a Quebec cast or a Kyle cast?
I don't know what it is, dude. It seems on a win streak cast. That's for sure, because Gary's on a heater, too.
Cat cast. Let's get it. Cat cast? Cap cast? Who knows?
Oh, my God.
Let's completely ignore all that and start with the Pioneer League.
I mean, sure, that works too. I've been a little out of the loop on the Pioneer League recently. It's just been like a weird series of days where like I haven't gotten a chance to it's first thing in the morning. I'll lock in on what's going on the like leagues that are playing early games, like day games, and then by the time I get the Pioneer League, like it's either too late in the afternoon to really dig in too deep, or I'm already occupied on something else because God forbid I have a job, which is a nightmare. So yeah, man, I'm a little out of the loop on the Pioneer League, so this will be a good catch up here.
You're living the Delta Airlines experience because life is a nightmare.
That sounds about right. We can compare Delta experiences one of these episodes. Yeah. So let's see.
Just Pioneer League. Do we want to first, before we get into baseball, mention that the Oakland Ballers have added to their ownership group, or do we want to ignore what they're doing off the field for a week?
Mention it. I don't have much to say on it, but if we want to at least shout it out or give it the quick read through, that works.
All right. They got new investors. They're members of a prominent family in San Francisco. It appears the Haas family. What to make of this? Apparently, they're related to the former billionaire CEO of the Levi's Jeans Corporation. They have an undisclosed stake in team ownership now. Appears to just be continuing to build on the for the Bay, for Oakland goal that they have. I do find it kind of funny that a San Francisco dynasty is buying into an Oakland thing. Kind of funny there. But that being said, it's a nice cash infusion, assuming it's a meaningful stake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add to it. Just kind of is what it is right now, and we'll see if there's any actually like recognizable effects coming. But yeah, like, all right, more money coming in is a good thing, especially with some of the concerns we've kind of discussed on and off the pod. So yeah, man.
Especially with the fact they made some expensive investments into the ballpark and into the team so far. The nice cash infusion does help stabilize. Plus, they've been getting some money from selling some contracts. They already sold like 2 or 3 in the last couple of weeks. So that's a nice sign for the players and for the pocketbooks, I guess.
Right. Agreed. So they got income coming in from a few places. They're going right by some players. So all good stuff.
Exactly. That's really all there is. We'll move on from there. And honestly, I'll even keep talking about them just from more of an on-the-field perspective. They've kind of been a happy surprise so far. I'm not going to lie. They look respectable, which coming into the season was something that we didn't think was a slam dunk.
I agree. They're holding their own. We'll see when they really play some of the top teams in the league. But yeah, definitely 15-12 is a good start for a new team, let alone one that we already had concerns about. Yeah,
I mean, batting wise, what do they rank? About middle pack? Would you call it that?
Middle-ish.
The bottom. I mean, like, I'll put it like this. Next week when we do the mid-report, because it is already mid-report time next week, I think they'll be firmly in the mid category. They're pretty middle of the pack pitching. They're pretty middle of the pack batting wise. Although I will say pitching wise, there's a large drop between them and the team right underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say that in Idaho, man, 10 ERA, get that under control quickly, please, for the sake of the children.
I would say they're probably more like, I see either offense sitting around like the 9 spot in the league right now.
All right.
Which I know sounds harsh, but that's realistically kind of where they seem to be falling in. Yeah, pitching wise, it's a little bit tougher. I mean, I would say probably 4th or 5th, I think, in pitching.
Okay.
Based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Flip side, though, going to the other team there in YOLO.
Yes.
Do we it feels like they're the better team on paper and just the record doesn't reflect it? Although that makes it sound like they're like worlds apart record wise. They're what, like 2 games apart record wise?
Yeah.
15 and 12 versus 13 and 11. I mean, like.
So about a half game, actually. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does feel like they should be better on paper. I'm not quite sure what to make of it not being better. It's.
I mean, how much of it's bad luck or beating up on bad teams, right?
They're probably the 7th or 8th best team offensively.
Okay.
From a pitching perspective, I mean, probably the 2nd or 3rd best pitching team. So we can see where the weakness is.
Yeah.
You're gonna want some offense, my guys.
Yeah, which you'd think is easier in this league, but then you realize they're playing most of the games in California, so they're not getting that Pioneer League boost.
Right, which is part of it. The offense is probably better than they're being given credit for, and the pitching is probably worse than they're being given credit for, but it kind of comes out in the wash.
And next week they do play in Idaho Falls the whole time, so they should get a boost to the numbers. Then an Oakland series, then a Rocky Mountain, then Oakland for forever, then a Rocky Mountain for forever, and then Noco for forever. Like, I know why it's this way, but it is kind of weird that they just play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different teams the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's really weird. I don't know how I feel about it, but it is what it is. So it doesn't really matter what I feel about it, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the thing. We always knew what the situation was going to be coming into it, and we knew the reservations we have coming into it. But at the same point in time here, it does make me feel kind of like a competitive balance here, boys.
It's a bit of a Mickey Mouse schedule, yeah.
Yeah, like, I think it's fine for now. Rocky Mountain seems to be about in the same plane. Oakland seems to be about in the same plane. Noco's a little bit better, while Idaho Falls and Grand Junction are both worse. So I feel like it kind of comes out in the wash a little bit.
I agree too. But it's definitely opening yourself up for something of, an eye roll situation when it comes to shaking out how it comes to how the playoffs shake out. But I think for now they're probably going to get away with it. And also I can either way, I think I can free pass them this year. But if it comes back next year this way, I'm kind of like, hey, what are we doing out here?
Like, at the very least, going into next year, give me a plan of what we're going to be doing.
Yes. Yeah, that's really it. Like,
yeah, like if you have to run it back again for one more year like this, that's fine. But then year 3 should be telling me, assuming there will be a year 3, will be like, okay, we're not just going to play 6, 7 teams now, right? We're going to play a more balanced schedule, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
and we'll see.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, as we know.
Exactly. Also, Missoula, 20-7. Great record for them.
Dude, I know. Lost 2 in a row, but still, Missoula.
Exactly. That and Glacier's getting hot, 7 in their last 3, and Boise's hanging around in there. Must be good vibes around that team.
Billings winning 2 in Missoula is interesting because Billings has been good, but not like impressive. So that's worth keeping an eye on.
It's going to be an interesting race when we get further down the line at the end of the first half, but we got a little bit of time there. So I just wanted to quickly look at the Pioneer.
It's jumped out at me before. Billings played Missoula really well last year, and considering how often they play, it was a huge benefit for them because they got into that playoff spot. It wasn't super close, but what definitely helped is all the teams they're competing with were dropping at least 2 out of 3 every time they played Missoula, or 4 out of 6, as the case may be. And Billings was kind of breaking even, and just those games add up pretty quick and play as often as they did. So it is worth. Do not underestimate the value of winning against teams that everyone else has taken losses to, man. So that I would not be surprised if series like these come back around at the end of the year.
Definitely. Also, just fun fact, this Cone kid for Ogden's hitting .444.
Damn. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple guys that are just still putting up unreal numbers. Where's real quick.
Oh no, we have a new champion atop the ERA board too. Maybach for Billings is under.
He's been killing it, dude. He's dealing.
Yeah. And Malone's
Adam Fogel, by the way.
Map.
Adam Fogel is up to 11 home runs, leading the league. He's slashing 451, 568, 934, with So that's good for a 1502 OPS right now through 118 plate appearances. Gross. Right. Really, really, truly disgusting behavior. And I'm into it.
Okay. Well, do we have anything else here? Or?
All right. Last thing that's looking up just the Fogel situation here. Must be bad weather in Colorado today, huh? Because both Colorado games got canceled.
I think so. But, yeah. But, yeah, are we to go with the Pioneer?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
All right,
I'm too wild this week.
All right, let's work our way up the chain by going to the Frontier League next, because there's actually stuff to talk about here. New Jersey, 11 losses in their last 12.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, they split with New York tonight to salvage something here.
Mm-hmm.
But still not a good look there. Fighting with New England on the bottom here, and Sussex don't think you're getting off the hook either. You're still really in the doldrums here, boys. Not looking good there. I don't know what to make of Three Rivers. He's one game above 500 after having a bad series against Sussex, funny enough. Tri-City kind of in skid mode, while Quebec is just hammering everyone they play, and Ottawa sneakily moving into a playoff spot right now. And then
right.
New York's doing what they're doing. So
easing in on that, but skid mode, solid.
Yeah. So which one of these disasters do we want to look at first?
God, I don't know. I mean, New England, New Jersey are not unexpected situations.
Yeah, I will say
Tri-City remains interesting because they've kind of been just streaky, I feel like, this year, unless I'm imagining this, but they've lost 5 in a row now. They won 1, lost 2, won 1, lost 2, and then it was like 4 wins in a row, a loss, 4 wins in a row. Like, it's kind of been like that all year.
Yeah, I mean, they had periods where they won 4 in a row and periods where they lost 4 in a row. So that definitely is the case there. I don't know what to make of it. I think they're more or less, if they're playing teams beneath them, they can get some wins. But when they start playing teams that are their equal, they struggle a bit more with it.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I think.
And that does seem to be
a mid-team
for the schedule. Because, like, if you look at it, like, lost 3 to Quebec, lost 2 out of 3 to Trois-Rivières, lost 2 out of 3 to Evansville. It's kind of inexcusable right now, but lost 2 out of 3 to New York, and then swept New Jersey, 1 2 out of 3 against New England, 1 2 out of 3 against Ottawa, but not kind of the current vibe of Ottawa we're seeing. 1 2 3 against Quebec, but not the current Quebec team we're seeing. Like, so, yeah, okay, that tracks.
Yeah, and honestly, even the Evansville one, I mean, look at Evansville's record compared to Tri-City's record, and you can tell me they're not
right.
You know, just saying.
Yeah, Evansville's kind of chipping away too at their deficit, so it'll be interesting. It might be too little, too late because things kind of get out of hand quick, but hey, who knows?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the case there. I will say with New Jersey, I don't necessarily think that they're on the same level as New England, even if that's what the record says. Just because if you take away the worst part of their season, they're not that bad. But you know, they show more life than I think a New England team does. And maybe it's just the vibes leaking in from off the field because, I mean, New England's doing their 2023 Jackal impression right now. And that's not a great scene.
Yeah, I mean, off the field, right.
Which they should be, by the way, New England should be thanking the good Lord every day when they wake up that the Oakland Ballers have had their whole thing going on. Otherwise, we'd be talking way more about their issues.
I mean, and we should at some point, maybe we'll do like a more detailed profile and catch up of what's going on in New England, because we really have to discuss the off the field New England and like the general vibe around the knockouts since the season started.
Yeah.
Which I think as we learn more, I think maybe we should talk about that. So maybe we'll see where we can fit that in sometime.
Exactly. Especially because when you get down to it, like right now, our beef with Oakland for the most part is we don't think something's right there. Like, there's something amiss or not permanent, that there's more to it than what's there. But for right now, it's working. They're getting results on the field. They're fine off the field. Nothing remarkable either way. New England's not getting results on the field. They're not getting results off the field. And realistically, if you just did one of those, like, compare these two without knowing which is which, if you looked on paper, you probably would say New England's a worse spot to be in right now.
Oh yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a directionless mess, and without getting too deep into it, because I know we'll probably have it deserves to be a bigger discussion because it is such
Yeah.
an interesting situation. But yeah, it's a directionless mess is how I would describe it, and how I have described it, and how fans have described it. So
Yeah.
we're not far off there.
Yeah, that's definitely the case there. Sussex County, I think we're going to waste too much time talking about them.
Yeah. Not sure what to make of them necessarily either, but
yeah,
it's not great.
Yeah, I will say Trois-Rivières is doing a very nice job turning the season around, turning around their recent past. That's definitely a positive there. Although when you click on their team page, it has them at 17, 17, and 1, as opposed to 18 and 1. So I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, I mean,
high in the 7-inning game against New England.
Interesting. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, well, whatever in there, but
well, I think they're in it's not ideal, but I think they're in a good spot right now. I mean, 2.5 games out of the playoffs
with Ottawa this weekend.
With Ottawa this weekend, and an Ottawa team that, like, while they're hot right now, you don't necessarily bet on them being this hot for the entire length of the year. So, yeah, I mean, they could see a big turnaround here. I wouldn't be super surprised.
Yeah, and honestly, I really kind of love their August schedule. I know we're looking 5 weeks
way
ahead
out,
now.
but yeah, I it's funny. I know I do too, because it stood out to me, and it like I have it in my head that they have a bit of an opportunity.
At home, New England. On the road, Tri-City, to on the road, New Jersey, at home for Quebec, at home for New Jersey, on the road for Quebec, and they finish at New Jersey, and then 2 home series against Sussex and New Jersey. I mean, realistically, there's 6 to 9 games in there that will give you fits, but everything else is very winnable.
I was going to say that's about where that was hanging out. I was like, that could be like a 21 win stretch if they play their cards right. If that's my math is right, that's about 30 games or something.
Yeah. So realistically, it's hang in there for now. And even then, I mean, I'll admit July looks a little rough. There's some New York in there. There's a lot of Quebec and Ottawa in there. So
New York's going off though. Like that's not.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still a better team.
I agree with you, but at least it's not when New York was just tearing every team up that they were facing a couple weeks back. It's like, damn, this is they're down to earth. They're not going for sweeps every series. They're trying to make sure they're locking in series wins, which is a different energy.
Very true. Very true. I will say this much though. I think for Three Rivers, at least from a scheduling perspective, I haven't really looked too much at the team itself yet. I think the biggest thing for them is just not falling behind in these Ottawa games, right? I think these are games where you have to. If you lose 2 of 3, you have to get them back the next season and win 2 of 3. Right. So it can't fall behind there. Everyone else, I feel like they can manage them fairly well. And like I said, there's some tough games in July. If you can get out of July 500, I think you set yourself up really nice.
Oh, for sure. I think you're right. 500 is the right thing. I was trying to see if I could even stretch it lower, but I do think 500. I mean, it's again the argument of it's so hard to make the playoffs, even in what is I think a really soft division. I think that's not a hot take of New Jersey, New England, Sussex, and then even Tri-City. I mean, 4 of the 8 teams are they don't seem to be legitimate threats off the bat. I mean, we're still figuring out what Tri-City is exactly, but. For even in that situation, it's still so difficult to make the playoffs when it's 3 teams going out of 8. It's kind of like, damn.
Yeah. I mean, like, I will say this too. I think their best case scenario is they're going to assume they're going to be fighting for that 3 spot. I think it's pretty clear cut. It's going to be New York and Quebec in some fashion in the 1-2. And we're going to have a really fun time looking to see who's going to get that bye, because that bye is going to be huge. But if you're looking at August again, we already went over what Three Rivers' schedule looks like. In Ottawa's camp, they go to Quebec. They're home against New England, Sussex, which is nice. But then they're on the road at New York, on the road at Quebec, at home against Sussex. Then back on the road for just 1 series, going to Tri-City. Then they come home and they finish with New York, Quebec. I mean, that's a tough 12-game stretch. 15-game stretch. Yeah, I mean, really.
Everyone had some games in hand for that one.
Exactly. Where one team has 9 possible losses, I really only see 9 guaranteed wins, or probable wins rather. So if you are Ottawa, this is kind of the setup you'll want right now,
Mhm.
assuming that the bottom three stay where they are, and or not Ottawa. If this is where you want to be, if you're Three Rivers, assuming the bottom three stay where they are, and Tri-City kind of remains middling.
I mean, yeah, and it's just keep them in striking distance. It's a long season. Got to keep that in mind, but you can't. Again, we've talked about this now a couple times. You're not going to win, the playoff race right now, but you can lose it. So just make sure you don't lose it right now and keep yourself in it because you got a good shot once things come down to it.
Definitely. Before we go up to the west, do we want to talk New York, Quebec? Just one or the other?
Maybe a mention. I mean, right now, Quebec's won 11 in a row. They're chasing them down. They're only, 1.5 back now after New York split their doubleheader day with New Jersey.
Believe so.
It's getting tight. I think, what do you think by the time we do the next podcast? Think Quebec's up in the division?
I have to check New York's schedule real quick, but they have New Jersey for 3 at New Jersey, and then they go home to Sussex for 3. Ooh. Next week, we're going to take time to talk about Quebec, New York as a series.
Oh, yeah? Nuts.
Yeah, because that's how the month ends, 3.
Sick. Love that.
That could be a really fun one. Next week's
New
going to be a Frontier week.
Ooh, New York, though. New England for 3, Jackals for 1, and then Quebec for 3.
It'll be tight.
So they should be playing for the division lead then next week. Exciting.
Yeah, it'll definitely be for it. Having all those days off is kind of awkward, though.
Yeah.
No Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday game. It's very odd.
It's got to be some dumb scheduling from New Jersey, right? Like that's, or I don't know, because it's a home series. I don't know.
Is it a makeup for a rain out?
But still, why would you have all those days off in the middle?
Yeah, that's what it is. That New Jersey game is a makeup from a rain out in May. I don't know why they don't have.
Be hosting a tournament or something. They're definitely hosting an event, right? I mean, it's the only thing I can think of.
Has to be. Scrolling enough to read it. Graduations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, how can you not get a? I mean, maybe Jersey got the same thing going, but I know they've had a lot of graduations. It seems like already, but I don't know. It just seems weird. Great.
What's weird is like the rescheduled game in May was today on 20, and then this has been a one-off on the schedule. It's a scheduled one-off. That is a weird schedule quirk.
I mean, Jersey likes that stuff. Jersey, I feel like, always throws those in their schedule.
Yeah,
Weird one-off for the back and forth.
I don't like that at all.
I don't like it either. I wouldn't like that vibe.
Any case, make of that.
They're going to lose momentum, but
it's an awkward time to have off.
Yes, it is. And I mean, I think Lexington did something similar when I was there. At least they scheduled it when I was there. It ended in like the Genomes and Legends both having like a week off. The players were not thrilled.
Free week to Mexico.
I think they went to Vegas. Yeah, and Brandon flew a bunch of guys over, which is a vibe.
Good for the team.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's good for the vibes.
You're not wrong.
But yeah, so Quebec has been beaten up on a bunch of garbage teams and Gateway. And Tri-City, I guess. They got to keep doing it.
Because we're not sure what Tri-City is still, but yeah.
And that's the deal there. In the West, any major happenings here? I see Florence is beating up on Windy City a little bit.
Yeah, which is an interesting development. Not super interesting. It would be nice if Windy City was a little better, but whatever. But yeah, it's good to see Florence get some sort of momentum rolling here.
So the social media getting a little out of pocket here, boys.
I know.
Remember, still under 500 here. They still have more wins than you do. Let's keep that in mind when we make our posts.
Yes. I would say, Washington did a good job. It would have been huge if they got a sweep this weekend, but they did a good job handling their business. They're just consistently good. I mean, what's your vibe on Washington? I'm trying to decide if they're the real deal here. I'm kind of having the same middle ground with Lake Erie, and it's mainly because they're teams that do have, some success in the past, or they have levels of success in the past. But since I've been covering them, they haven't been that great. So it's like, for me, I'm like, I know this. Other people aren't really freaking out about this, but I'm kind of like, oh, wow, I haven't seen this before.
I think for Washington,
outside of a media guy.
Yeah. Washington, I'm going to learn about this week. 9 road games, Schaumburg, Gateway, Lake Erie.
Yeah.
That will tell me everything I need to know about them. Washington historically does put up a good team. I kind of view them as like the Carolina Hurricanes of the Frontier League.
All right.
Like,
I can see it.
Strong team, good regular season, fall short in the playoffs. So I'll give them that. Lake Erie has won a championship as of recent, the fairly recent one, but they have fallen on hard times since the last couple of years. So make of that what you will. I'm inclined to believe Lake Erie a little bit more of a real talk contender, just because I like their wins a little bit better. Be curious to see how things shake out. Ooh, they have a nice, easy start to July. Windy City, then New Jersey, Sussex, Evansville, Florence. Actually, all of July is easy. They just have one series against Washington. It'll be tough, including a coffee cup game. But they have a bad August. We'll see what they're made of come August.
Okay.
But yeah, Schaumburg, I like a lot about them too. Like, there's a lot of teams I like a lot about. But this is very much a clear cut. There's 4 teams here that we should consider serious contenders, and then 4 that we're looking for more than just on-field victories right now.
I mean, and this is just from a rooting for good things for indie ball perspective. I'm really hoping Gateway and Trois-Rivières keep winning. And I think because there is a divide between the 4th and 5th minus, like everything below teams, I do think it makes it so that they almost have to stay in it.
Yeah.
Because half the league is kind of likely a win at this point, but it just would be frustrating if, Gateway and Trois-Rivières have a couple bad weeks and fall out, and then basically both playoff races are decided except for the seeding, in July, which is a reasonable possibility at this point. Like, this is kind of shaping up not spectacularly for the competitive side of things, which I'm really rooting against because that'll make for a long season here.
Yeah. Which also, on the flip side, though, makes it a little bit easier to run this show, though.
Yeah, true. And we'll catch up with you in a month and a half when the playoffs start.
Exactly. We'll check back in around Labor Day.
Good. And yeah, before everyone's like, "Oh, you're rooting against your favorite team," it's like, nah, man, I was rooting for good baseball for a long time, and this could get pretty uncompetitive. We're in danger here. I mean, we got a 2-game gap now between the last playoff spot and the game behind, 2.5 in the East. So
it's like,
that can escalate quickly. A bad series, and we're looking at 5 or 6 games between playoff spots and that team.
Exactly. I'm rooting for storylines and for players. That's what I'm rooting for here.
Yeah.
Like Ryan Sandberg right now, who has a 1.24 ERA.
Right? That'll play. Chuck it around, big dog.
Hey, look, Jack Eisenbarger.
Yeah, I got to do some more player deep dives probably next month.
Yeah.
I've been all over.
Yeah. Imagine being a team that would have him at some point, not utilize him correctly, then lose him, and I'll watch him succeed, I don't know, maybe 50 miles away.
Yeah, that would be a tough scene, man. I would hate that. I'm glad that isn't happening.
I know. It definitely never happened anywhere in the state of Ohio.
Damn, flip the script on Gary there, huh? Rude.
I know. I just confused Gary, Indiana with being in Ohio, but it's flyover country. It's all the same.
It's whatever. Wow. Okay.
Frank Mascatiello. So we got to make sure we're still on the same page.
Frank Mascatiello, I mean, he's walking people, which is a choice, but continues to
allowed to walk
good indie ball innings too. This would be his 3rd. He's on pace for his 3rd Frontier League season with an ERA under 3. So gross.
Yeah, he just keeps doing it. Which final point in the Frontier League? Yeah, yep. I just want to point one thing out there before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a bad idea to trade Tyler Thornton if you're the Miners?
Oof.
Lost cost season may be able to get something of value through player to be named later. And if I'm Gary, I'm looking at getting Tyler Thornton.
Yeah. Let me think.
I don't know what classification he'd fall.
Yeah, that's what I was checking here. Tyler is experience 2.
He's experience 2 there, but if you go outside, I don't know what he's qualified for.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the handbook and all that.
I know, I'd have to do some math, which I'm not trying to do right now. It's way too late in the game for that. But And maybe we should work in a matchmaker segment at some point here coming up.
Oh, absolutely.
Hell yeah.
All right. Any event, want to go to the Atlantic League here?
Surely.
All right. I'm going to let you take lead on this one because this is more your forte than mine.
Yeah, I mean, the big things right now in the Atlantic League, York has now opened up a 6-game lead over Lancaster. That's looking like, I mean, they got about 13 games left now in the first half. That's looking like it could be done. I'll do a double check right this second now. I do kind of forget if York has Lancaster on the schedule again before the end of the season or before the end of the half. They do have 3 against them. So they're about to start a 3-game set against them this weekend. So if they can at least take one of those, they should be good. But no, I think they close with 3 against them as well. So, I mean, Lancaster's still in it, but boy, they're going to have to really get some momentum quick. Not like they didn't just have a 15-game win streak, but they've also lost 6 out of 7 since, I think, something like that. So not great. Maybe definitely lost 6 out of 10. On the other end, Gastonia is also opening up on High Point, just finished off a sweep with 3 walk-offs over High Point. That's demoralizing as all hell. But we talk a lot about how even those teams are, because they went down to the last day in the first half last year. They tied for the season overall. They went to Game 5 last in the playoffs last season, and didn't they go down to their last game the season before? So you cannot get more even than Gastonia and High Point right now, and going to a walk-off for 3 straight games is not unsurprising. Kills High Points from them. They had 1-8 straight going into there, so it's big. They're getting contributions from all over. I don't have a ton. I should have just pulled my notes up. Damn, Ryan. But they're getting, as I just vamp for a second.
You don't even have to vamp, because now I think I have an answer on Tyler Thornton here. So it says 30 innings or more pitched of an MLB PBL league or independent league or leagues in any season prior to the present calendar year will count as a service year for the American Association. Tyler Thornton here has 1, 2, well, technically, actually, take the back 1, 2, 3, 4 years that would qualify under that definition prior to that. So I believe it'd either be an LS3 or an LS4, because in a later passage, it does also say that for independent or short season / rookie league service, the first 2 years of service equals 1 MLB PBL league. So, depending on how that's interpreted, would either be an LS4, counting 19, 21, 22, and 23, seeing as 24 didn't start till the present calendar year, or if you qualify that as combined, then actually he'd be an LS2.
And I forget. I was so in the weeds on this off season, I already forgot. So I got to kind of double check how that they'd like to count that. I felt like I had a weird thing going where every time I would check my math on one of those, I was wrong. And then every time I didn't check my math, but let someone else check, they were like, no, you're all good. Like when I had a list of them to go through, I was like, what the hell? So I even while I was very in the weeds with this off season, I was still very spotty with it. It's like, it is a very finicky system with some gray lines and gray areas that were determined based on other things that have happened in the past. And then you just have to feels like sometimes you just have to know the rule and not find it somewhere. It's weird. Or I'm overcomplicating in my head and I suck. Possible as well. Yeah. Now, on the Atlantic League topic, I was going to say Gastonia is just a problem. Josh Stowers is hot. He's slashing well over 400 over the past couple games with I think an OPS over 1100. Charleston's 9-0 against Lexington this year. Just beating the P out of them, which I mean, it's Lexington, but it's still kind of funny. 9's a lot. It's going to be a bit much. It's going to be noteworthy. Staten Island, Long Island, they go back. Staten Island wins another series against Long Island. So that is interesting. So Staten Island's been struggling, but it is interesting to watch the back and forth there, man. Of this new era of Long Island baseball, and they're struggling against Staten Island. It's Staten Island's working toward their new era too. Yeah. It's interesting. You can feel a little bit of tension.
Yeah. I honestly, Long Island's a conversation we're going to need to have.
I am beginning to think so too. I'm giving that some leeway. because again,
I'm giving it till July.
Yeah,
I think we see
fair.
how this first half ends, and then we have this conversation.
Right.
That'll be a big thing. David Washington, too.
David Washington's killing the ball.
7 home runs in the last 7 games, 14 ribbies. Yeah.
Did he hit another one tonight by any chance?
I could check real quick.
No, he hit 2 last night, and he was at 19.
Yeah, he hit 1. 1 for 4 home run, 3-run shot. He also struck out 3 times, but,
Well, big dog's putting out bombs is what it is.
Can I just talk about the season stat for Washington real quick? 42 games, 20 home runs, 15 walks, 77 strikouts.
Big
stolen bases.
I think I saw him strike out like 3 or 4 times in one game, and he was just like, "Yeah, hi." Like he didn't get his pitch that bad. And I was like, "All right, it's kind of a vibe."
327 average though, and the thing is though, like his OPS is still really good. It's over 1100. So like,
how it works. A strikeout's just an out if you look at it that way. I mean, well, according to the numbers, I'm not a believer in that piece of analytics, but
yeah. I mean, like, I kind of want to call him Adam Dunn-esque, but Adam Dunn be hitting 180. So, like...
Right. He ain't running.
Yeah. Coles are finally figuring out how to swing a bat. It's nice, too. I like to see that.
Yeah, man. Daryl Thompson had a good outing, by the way.
And you wrote him off. How dare you
I didn't necessarily. But I do think if he doesn't consider... he has been having some better outings, but if he can't fully turn the season around, I also think we're going to have a conversation down the line of, is this... it? I do think they'll do an announcement before. Like I think he'll get a farewell tour, but it
as he should
makes me. Oh yes, no way he deserves it more. It just does make me kind of go, wow, like is this really? And you can't have a conversation. It's tough because you can't have a conversation about Daryl from without people being like, shut up. Essentially, like, what are you talking about? You're an idiot. You don't know. But I'm also like, it has to happen eventually.
Yes, and the injuries make you think it's going to be sooner than later, but at the same time, too, he also has enough of a track record where you're like, yeah, but it won't happen.
Yeah, and, sure, he had injuries last year, but it was a lower body injury as far as we know, so it's also like,
part of the pitching mechanic, though, and he is 38.
Yeah, I agree.
He's basically in the grave at this point.
If this was an elbow, it would be a different conversation.
Oh, yeah, no.
Not that I would. Hey, look, I'm a Jamie Moyer believer, so it's not like I'm saying that would end a career, but yeah, it will be. It might be a discussion if things don't continue to improve.
Now, the question is when Daryl is eventually done, because that's probably within the next 2 or 3 years, if we're being honest with ourselves,
right?
Barring the Lou Ford-esque occasional spot start. How long before his numbers retire down there? Is it like the last game he plays, or is it the first game of the next season?
Oh, man. From a ticket selling perspective, I would say you do farewell game to end the year, and then the number retirement in the beginning of the year. That'd be my move.
Because I know the Miners did a deal where they retired Siriaco's number, but they didn't really make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a mistake.
I agree. Yeah, I remember that. I thought that was uncomfortable. I didn't like it.
I got tipped off it was going to happen, so I went to that game. I was like, oh, that's what we're doing today?
Like, yeah. But I don't know. This feels like, there's people who, so as a NASCAR fan right now, Martin Truex is retiring, and Truex is a fascinating guy, kind of an unsung type of like really badass driver who kind of grinded through the first few years of his career. So people, he wasn't always the headlines guy, but he just announced he's retiring at the end of the year. But it's been cool because already over the past like 10 days, there's been a lot of talk, like just about, stories that you never thought you'd hear. And like a lot of people expressing their appreciation and to him, like, because people are, they don't say things, they bring flowers to the funeral, not to dinner. And it's nice to see that, and I think it's a deserved thing, whether it makes people uncomfortable or not.
It's interesting. So I always wonder how you manage that from a promotion standpoint, because the lead up's nice, but also for me on some sort of human level too, the saddest thing in the world is an empty ballpark when you're retiring a number.
Oh God, yeah.
Isaac Pavlik got hit like that.
Something about that like strikes at, like, I don't know, I feel it. Like I have this burned in memory of watching on TV when the Sixers were in down years, it was opening night and they did the walk through the crowd down to the court for their opening intros. It was just so empty, man. And I hurt for them. And it sucks. And it feels like it just, you think about the people that you wish were there and it feels like
it feels like it should be bigger than that. It feels like it should be an event. And now it's definitely doesn't feel like an event.
And that is especially the case with someone like Daryl Thompson, who I think was integral to the success of Southern Maryland Blue Crabs. Like he is such a unique case, and as a person that could mentor and lead within that organization, a person who's had a massive impact on how many times have we talked about? My God, look at this pitching staff of like randoms who got great, and then they're not back because they're elsewhere. They get signed or whatever the case. And then they bring in randoms and we're like, God, they really are going to fall off and maybe they have a slow start. And all of a sudden they have an bullpen ERA below 3. And you're like, how is this possible? Like
a lot of guys owe Daryl a lot.
And the familiarity, like it's one of the rare guys that there is familiarity between the fans and the player. And I'm not just talking about the hardcores day in, day out people, the host families. We're talking like people who go to games a few times a year. Odds are they recognize Daryl Thompson by sight. They know the name. They've seen him pitch probably at least a couple times, just the odds would say. And that's, and on their social media, he's the guy who's always racking up new records. Like, I don't know, man. It's such a rare breed, man.
Plus, first getting there, in like 2012, a guy that admittedly doesn't have much, but had some major league service time. That's a name that you can at least draw on a little bit. There's something there. And Isaac Pavlik's kind of the same thing because he's almost like same deal for New Jersey. And going to that game and seeing that place like 80% empty, it's just like you give so much to an organization, you give so much to, a fan base to a certain extent. And then the team tries to do right by you and the fan base, I hate to say, doesn't do right by you, but that's exactly when you don't show up for that. And part of it is on the team to market it better, to get it well known, and the season ticket holders and the diehards will be there, no doubt about that. But still, on some level, you're like, gave my arm for this shit. It'd be nice for them to show up for it, which is why I always hope for the perfect 80-degree, partially sunny kind of Saturday game. I understand from a business perspective, you want the retirement on a day that may not be as juiced, but I'd rather sacrifice a little bit on that and try to get something that's already going to be at 80% capacity up to 85, 90 and have the atmosphere than try to get something that's going to be at 40 up to 50 and really lose that atmosphere. It's just one of those times where I feel like you can make a business argument either way, but you sacrifice the business of it for the person that's involved as the true sign of appreciation. You're like, look, we could have done it a different way. We didn't do it this way out of respect.
I think you're dead on. And I think I always support, and that's, I don't know, that's a kind of worms on the attendance conversation, but I was just leave it at, I definitely agree with the concept there of, you got to do right by the player in that situation. So hopefully that all goes well. And look, I mean, this will be an interesting conversation to have again in 5 years when it might actually retire.
Exactly. Yeah. And I do the last point on it before we go do anything else we have to do in the Atlantic League this week, but I think other players take note of that. Right. Not everybody has the leisure picking where they play. A lot of guys don't, frankly, on this level. But there are guys, especially guys that have major league service time, guys that are I don't know if I'm going to get back. I'm at that age where I'm say 26, 27, especially if you're a batter, where it's a real touch or go. My best case is probably Mexico. And depending on your situation, personal wise, that might not be what you really want to do. You'll do it for the money, but you really don't want to do it. If you see an organization that treats guys right, gets guys through, and actually cares about them, that's a selling point.
Oh, absolutely is. Yeah.
So it's something I tend to line up with.
I wholeheartedly agree with it. it's an opportunity to show who your organization is while everybody's watching.
Exactly. What else do we have in the way of the Atlantic League this week?
Nothing too wild. Just tracking the Staten Island fall off, which they're trying to sort of prevent, but they're struggling. Long Island, again, as we've discussed, is kind of off and on, but yeah, it's kind of it. It's there's a gap now. Gastonia is really working High Point. They did a good job winning those close games, and now they're hopefully going to reap the rewards. I mean, for their sake, I'd like for Gastonia to at least get. I don't want to watch Gastonia collapse for the second straight first half, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not that I prefer them in High Point. I like both these teams. I'm at a point where I'm like, I don't want to watch that happen for a second year in a row.
Yeah. The only question I really have left to raise in the Atlantic League here, and Staten Island's a team where I think finished the first half 500. I'll consider that a victory already. I think Minikasi's, working miracles over there. So that's nice to see. Like Island, that's a conversation we'll have in July. Hagerstown's, and we already said off the field what we're concerned about there. Lexington off the field what we're concerned about there. Southern Maryland's basically Staten Island at this point, just of a different feather. Charleston's getting their act together. That's nice to see that they're recovering after being completely raided in June and May. Gastonia is going to be Gastonia, and York's looks like they'll actually get a postseason berth, which is nice to see after being screwed last year.
Well deserved again. Yeah, talk about things we don't want to watch happen again.
Exactly, yeah. And Lancaster looks like they're poised to set up for that second half run that we all know they're going to go on, which really leaves High Point as a lone team here, and I still can't tell if they're legit or not. Like, they get beat up by Gastonia, but everyone gets beat up by Gastonia. They got really going after beating up Staten Island, but Staten Island may be Fugazi now. So we don't really know what the deal is here.
I'd argue they're not. They didn't get beat up, man. They lost 3 games late, which is concerning. It shows a flaw. Yeah. But they pushed Gastonia right up to the edge like they always do.
I always call those sweep getting beat up.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. There's getting beat up, and then there's,
there's getting punked, and then there's getting beat up. We'll talk about a team that got punked in just a second here after finally being ranked. I got news for you. That's not going to last this week. No. But can't get swept by Gary. That's not going to work. And we have a Gary conversation, and I don't mean to disrespect Gary here, but they shouldn't be sweeping teams.
No, I can't have that.
Yeah. So, that's the thing. Like, I give more credit to the High Point sweep, to be honest, than the High Point sweep of Lancaster, meaning I give that more weight than the Staten Island sweep at this point. But I just don't know what to make of them. I feel like they're legit because they normally are, and holy crap, they have a homestand coming up. But, look at this. They have one away series from now until July 12th.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it's in Gastonia, so it's not even like a real road trip. What are we doing?
Yeah. I think when we first did that, we talked about their schedule where they have a ton of road games sort of scattered throughout the beginning of the year. And then, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 at home. So it's 3 at home starting Friday, and then 3 on the road, and then 12 at home. And then, they also have a good stretch of home games, I recall, in August too, maybe. I forget. But yeah, it was notable, even from the jump. Looking at things you don't notice on the initial calendar, and then you look at the printable one where they've got the color boxes for home and away, and you're like, whoa, that's a lot of whatever color in that one half.
Yeah, even the point streak one where they have where the game's going to be played, and you just notice the same thing 10 times over.
All the way down. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
It's like, what's this? This has to be a misprint. But it's hard for me to say here. I'm looking at what's coming up for them. Southern Maryland's not going to show me much. Gastonia will. Charleston. Yeah, I think I'd be willing to say I'll have a firm direction on them by the end of the first half. I think they have a tough road to it. They start off the second half, I don't want to say easy, but Lancaster's what they are. Then 6 easy games, and then York, Southern Maryland. I have a hard time figuring them out. They're definitely not a bad team. They're good at worst. I just can't tell if they're, legit contender status, and I think they are. It's just I can't ever tell.
I think they are. I mean, we are 3 sketch innings away from talking about them leading the division right now. So
fair enough.
I try to always back up to not reacting to one series, especially when it's real close. But
pitching selling me on that point, to be honest with you. Losing Weiss isn't. I mean, losing Weiss probably won't affect them too bad, but losing a starter isn't great.
Yeah, I mean, and looking at
that's really nice though.
Exact loss, like talk about that moves around enough things that can cause just enough desperation to have one extra bad inning every game for the last 3 days. Like that could be a big chunk of what just happened. So like that's why I'm trying not to be like, oh, Gastonia definitely better. Though we do look smart for putting Gastonia above High Point despite the 8-game winning streak they had last week. So kudos to us on that one. Pat on my back.
Well, the American Association now. We won't spend too much time elsewhere in the league because we do have about an hour long or hour and a half long.
Something like that, dude.
We have a deep dive on Gary. Kyle's back.
Yes.
We talk about it. You'll get to hear the whole thing in just a moment. But first, I do want to go around quick thoughts on a couple of teams, and then really want to just hit up 2 teams, at least for me. Rest of the teams have been pretty much keeping pace for what they're at. I guess either next week or the week after we'll do a deeper dive on some of them. Probably the week after because next week will be a Frontier week. Lincoln, bad team, not looking good at all. And I'm going to be honest with you, they're skirting a lot of blame. Gary's taking a lot of the hits that Lincoln should be taking right now.
I mean, let's call it. This is not what we would have ever expected from the Brett Jody era. And I also think it sounds like the Lincoln might be one of these teams where there's not full buy-in financially for the baseball side of things. So that might be what we're seeing here, but
roster backs that up. I see a lot of rookies and LS ones and twos.
Yep. Yes, it does. Just can't get guys in there with that kind of attitude towards spending. Yeah, and it's not me necessarily. And I know I just wrote Brett Jody's name into this, and then
then basically,
I would say certainly a manager is somewhat responsible, but I guess my main point there is, you can point to Brett Jody, but it does seem like from the outside looking in, there's something else going on here.
I mean, Brett Jody and Cash Champ as a staff there is a nice staff, although I don't know why they have
though I do think Cash might have gotten a little Pioneer League happy bring guys over.
I can see that, but then again, if it's not a full spending buy-in,
true, that's the option. Honestly, are they the problem? You could argue also they're probably not.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting thing here, and it also seems like if you leave the Yankee system, you may go to Lincoln. I'm noticing a lot of that.
Interesting.
Which I wonder who has connections to a current Yankee affiliate.
Right.
Yeah. So I get that. But yeah, Lincoln's a team that should be getting more scrutiny than they're getting.
Scrutiny.
Scrutiny. Sioux City's there, whatever. Sioux Falls being the better of the two Siouxs is kind of weird to me, but I'm here for it. Fargo looking good. Lake Country kind of finding themselves. Like to see that. Chicago crashing down to be more of what we expected from them. They'll still probably make the playoffs because there's too many teams in the playoffs in this league.
That's
and
fair.
Then it's kind of a jumbled mess at the top of the East, which we'll decode that later on. The 2 teams I really want to talk about that aren't Gary, because like I say, big Gary segment coming up. Kansas City and Winnipeg. Kansas City, obviously a whole dilemma with the field there, getting broken glass and cigarette butts in there, losing big money for losing the weekend and another series on top of that. That's got to eat into your baseball ops budget too. But they're not the same team, Kansas City. They just don't feel it.
I agree, and I keep waiting for it. Like I keep waiting for again, they could be slow playing. There's not a real threat from behind them right now, but they definitely do not feel like the the force of nature that they seemingly were
That's the thing.
every season lately. So it could be a reload year. We talked about that when the season started.
Yeah.
But
it's the difference between them and Long Island, right? Long Island had some people in the beginning of the year and it just hasn't worked out. But you're still like, it's Long Island though, right?
Right.
Kansas City was like, they're not looking good right now, but it's Kansas City and they've had such a great 4-year run that like they've earned enough for me to not judge them on it. And like, I haven't wanted to have this conversation because it's like, they're still Kansas City though, right? Like they got guys, right? And like, I'm waiting still. And it's like, what are we looking at here? There's a couple outfielders and there's GM Barone and Stato. Where else are we looking at here, boys?
Yeah, there's a good bit of that. I will say they've had a better schedule than most teams also. I mean, even looking at like just from the top, how they opened their season, which was Sioux City, Fargo, Winnipeg, King County, and then they got a Lincoln series, Lake Country, who's not been a pushover. Then they got a Gary series, but then Sioux Falls, Fargo, Sioux Falls, Milwaukee, King County. Like really, they've only had 2 series that were like, playing the teams that they really are like, okay, they'll win 2 out of 3 there, maybe sweep. Yeah. So that's an angle looking at what they have left this season. I mean, they got they got a Gary series coming. They got a Lincoln series coming. They've got, they have a tough schedule. Yeah, that's about what they got actually. And
the thing is, I'm looking at their pitching too, and the pitching's just not inspiring a lot. The few good stars they had got picked off early on, and I mean, look at who's starting games now. You have a 4.3, which looks like your best starter at the moment.
Right.
Then you have a 5.33, a 5.56. You lost 2 other guys that were main parts of the rotation here, and now we're looking at what, a 7. That's in 15 innings. So I'm not going to put too much stock in a 7.5, and even less stock in a guy that's thrown 5 innings and has an 11 ERA. But I mean, maybe you go Garcia here, but he's more a bullpen guy, so I can't trust that number right now. Like, there's no starters here, and that means your bullpen's going to get overworked. And once the bullpen gets overworked, then it's going to all come in like a house of cards. Like, I got some concerns here. Like, it's all turned around, but I got some real concerns here. Plus, they just lost Rutherford to Mexico, I believe Tijuana. So, like, if he doesn't come back, you just lost your second best batter. Icer's cool. I like him. He's good.
Yeah, and that's it. I don't have a ton to add on that because you basically, that's the situation. They are not an overpowering roster anywhere, and I'm going to pull the sheet I was just working on for the Gary discussion, unless I can't find it. Classic. There we go. I'm just looking at like where they stack up positionally most of the time here. It is, I mean, Tostado is obviously a whole thing. Ortiz is not really getting it done in the middle infield for them. Then you're going down to like Jam Brone, but the numbers he's putting up isn't really a solution. Bradley in left hitting 232. Adolph's sitting well. Swaggerty's down around 250. Pitching that as short. I mean, 265, but he's playing short, so kind of wiggle room, but 0 home runs. So, yeah, man, it's not really. There's not that threat that we're used to seeing from them.
Yeah, it's just the vibes are so much different around this team. Like, they're still above 500, but like, they feel weaker. They don't feel like the same force they've been, and the lack of real depth in that roster is the culprit there. Moving on from Kansas City to Winnipeg, though, what are we doing? You boys had a great stretch. I mean, how many did you win? You swept Sioux City, nearly swept Kane, nearly swept Milwaukee. Yeah, right. You've had a really good stretch, really the whole month of June. I mean, how many wins we have in June right here? 1, 2, 3, 7, 10 wins coming into this series. 10 and what? 10 and 1, 2, 3, 10-4. 10-4 coming into this. Really looking like you turned a corner. One of the best pitching staffs in indie ball as a whole. And I don't know if we were just saying, hey, you got Fargo coming up. That's going to be a tough series. And you're not thinking about what you have in front of you here. You drop 3 to Gary.
Can't have it, man.
First one, okay. Losing a pitcher's duel to Gary is interesting, but okay.
It's a choice.
You know, anyone could have a bad day at the dish, and anyone could have a good day on the mound. 1-0, 1-run game. It is what it is. Forget about it. Move on. 6-3. Okay. That's again, losing the series is not good, but that one wasn't all that bad. Easterwood had a bad first couple innings, 6 runs across 2 innings because he didn't give up anything in the first. Just, second and third were bad, but then he pitched great outside of that, 7 innings of 6 earned. It looks a lot worse than it really is. Again, the bats don't show up though. Not another run comes across the dish from the third inning on. Like, okay, fine. Ty Tiedemann found himself a little bit and the bullpen did a good job. I see only 4 base runners are the rest of the way after Tiedemann left the game. So fine. But then tonight, like 1 run, 3 hits. At a certain point, we gotta say it wasn't the Gary pitching staff; it was the Winnipeg offense. And like giving up 2 runs in the first inning should not be insurmountable. It just shouldn't be. And I have some real concerns when the guys that we should be counting on to produce offense in Crows, in Emery, in Murphy, and really actually the whole top half of the lineup here doesn't show up. I give the leadoff guy a little bit of credit. He got 2 walks, so got on base. Good job. But like, I got some concerns. Like, it shouldn't be insurmountable. Also, Seabrook having to do some relief work is interesting tonight. That could hurt them later on. But like, come on, guys. I know it's one bad series. It's one off, and I'm hamming it up a little bit for entertainment effect here. But genuinely, though, we got to do better than this. It's like game 1, honestly, is almost pissing me off more because you gave up 2 hits, 1 run. You do not get much better from your pitching staff. Guy had a perfect game going on for 6 innings, 7 innings?
Yeah. And remember, they lost the near perfect game from Matalovich too this year. And that's what I've been saying. This has actually come up a couple times on my channel. I think we might mention over here too. My biggest issue with Winnipeg so far has been the offensive inconsistency because they will pop a team for 10 runs. But they have this inconsistent streak where even from going back to the first series of the year, they opened it by holding that really good Cleveland offense down to like 5, 6, 5, 1 runs, and they went 0-4 in those games. And then you look to like the Kansas City series, and they pretty much kept them in check, but they couldn't do anything with it. And they've had multiple games where they hold the team down to 3 or less runs too, and it's just they give it up. And I'm like, you're going to need those games. I mean, now is it going to be? There's twofold. Yeah, it's a twofold situation of why they're going to need those games. I mean, obviously you need them in order to make the damn playoffs. But as we've said before, it's fairly easy to make the playoffs in the American Association, relatively speaking. But, right now they're holding that last spot. So they better hope Sioux City doesn't get hot. Yeah. Now, where they're really going to need it is, they're Winnipeg. Like, they will likely have the longest travel. And it's nice to be able to bump up potentially to get a spot where you can pick who you play. But they probably are. I guess they won't really be able to do much because unless you're first, you can't really pick anything. And I don't see them necessarily getting there.
First, you're last.
But still, it's like, I don't know. And that's my biggest issue with the American Association's playoff format is literally, as I'm saying here, I'm like, why does it matter? It kind of doesn't, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yes. American Association, fix your playoffs.
Exactly. Like, I love the concept, but it just doesn't work in a league that is this small. Yeah. Now, I will say it could work and be a lot more interesting if you erase divisions come playoff time.
Mm-hmm. Right. Agreed.
Which considering how many teams just play outside the division anyway, maybe just get rid of divisions as a whole would be a good idea for this. And then you go to, like however many. And if you still didn't want to have a whole big thing, you could drop down to 6 and give 2 buys, and you could do it that way. Or keep it with the 8, which is still kind of weird, but whatever. And then you actually have meaningful picks for the first 2 or 3 teams, could be a thing. But I want to know where they're going to find this offense from, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we're really reaching the point where we have to start talking about, do you give up some bullpen help to go out and get a guy? Do you give up a starter to go out and get a guy? Because you already have 4 phenomenal starters.
I agree. It's something that I'm just going to tell you I can talk on for a long time, and maybe that's a next week conversation because we are way late into this podcast, but maybe next week we can do a deep dive into some trade partners because we've been talking now a couple weeks about doing this. So maybe next week is it. Maybe we start with Winnipeg because they are the team that I find the most I guess frustrating, which sounds harsh, but I just feel like they're so close and they're closer than they've been in a long while. But they're just so infuriating with the way they find ways to lose games. And you can almost see how this is going to wrap up when it comes to the playoffs. You know what I mean? You can see they're going to probably lose 3-1, 2-0, whatever. And that's it. Something ridiculous like that. And you're damn, what a waste.
Logan's come so close because he's built a really good team. And I think he learned a lot from his time in Cleburne here and he's applying it now. He's built a great pitching staff. Mm-hmm. He really has. And there's pieces on offense that should be working. He's even found some guys, but it's just, like you said, there's no consistency here. And honestly, the depth is concerning to me. It really is concerning. We've seen Max Murphy disappear for a stretch. He's got it back. So I hope he keeps that up.
Right.
But there's 1 or 2 guys here that if they get picked up, they go to Mexico or something, you're done. You're done because there's just no guns here outside of them. And I think it'll get a little bit better once you get Edwin Arroyo back and he's able to hop into the lineup and start playing games here. He was phenomenal when he was in Chicago and even in Cleburne a couple of years ago wasn't bad at all. So I think that will help out a lot. But you need another bat. You need it from somewhere.
Right. I agree.
So, yeah.
We'll do some scavenger hunt research between episodes here.
Absolutely. So, for the sake of brevity, let's start to the Gary interview. Well, not even really Gary interview, more, again, a conversation. Really, with Kyle, it's always more of a conversation than an interview, which I think works better, quite honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I like having Kyle on for that reason.
Exactly. It's a real fun conversation. We'll throw it to that more or less, just a really in-depth thing about the organization as a whole on and off the field. You'll see what we mean. Let's go talk about Gary with Kyle now. Shifting down to a conversation that we are afraid may become a little one-sided as it was last week. We are going to a Gary Railcats conversation, and we're going to try to stay on track because, get it, Railcats. And we're going to bring Kyle back on because we, again, need a guy that knows the Gary South Shore Railcats better than either one of us do. Welcome back, Kyle. Hopefully this time will go a little bit better and a little bit smoother than last week did.
Yeah, thank you, Nick and Ryan, for, again, having me on and be a little bit smoother this time. Hopefully it's just not my voice that's being heard on the podcast and you guys' questions actually being heard and not just kind of finagled in there to what was the streamline of the actual conversation.
I mean, many would argue not hearing us does improve the quality of the show. So I can't say much about that, but yes, hopefully we won't have to improvise as much.
I would say maybe if it was a different team, but it's Gary. People are figures.
Might drift a bit. Yeah, well, I was going to say, it might have been the most focused we've been in a while for one of those things, just having to go question answer back and forth. I was like, okay, go team. Get after it, Nick. We have to shoehorn the question back into the recording. It kind of forces a little bit less of a tangent to it. So it's nice. Yeah. Maybe we should shut the hell up more often, but that doesn't seem like us.
Nah, that would be fun. So, Gary, where are we at here before I go on a tangent about the Mavericks League, which has dramatically improved their website since last I checked? Bonus points.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I mean, the boys are winning right now, Kyle. They've been getting after it.
Yeah, I mean, they're 5-5 in the last games. Actually 6-5. They haven't updated the 5-4 game winning streak, sweeping the Winnipeg Goldeyes, who have one of the best pitching staffs in the league, and they actually beat them in all 3 games and actually outpitched them, which I was actually surprised by. And having a whole lot of visa issues and new guys coming in, it was figured as a throwaway series, and it ended up being a good series, which it could be a turning corner. But again, teams get hot, and you could be going back to being cold, and the pitching side giving up 24 runs in a game or 24 walks in a game, and the offense hitting three hits, and that's about it.
Yes, sir. I mean, currently Gary does actually have the longest winning streak in the association, at least at the moment. That could obviously change tomorrow if they were to not pull out a win on Friday. But at least as of now, they have the longest streak at 4. Nobody else has even 2. So that speaks volumes to them. They are starting to get together, closing in on the team that's in front of them. That's obviously a positive here. And I almost feel like you undersold Winnipeg's pitching staff because they have one of the best, I personally think, in independent ball as a whole here. Obviously, the only real subtraction they had from recently was Justin Courtney went to Mexico. So that's the only loss here. So that's still a hell of a pitching staff. So to put up, but they have a 1-zip shutout too to outduel them.
Yeah. And in that first game, Brosa had a perfect game going into the 7th inning. So it was just like, it was the game only lasted an hour and 55 minutes. Like that was the quickest 9-inning game I've seen in my life. Like it was back and forth, and it was solid. Peyton Long did great, and Brosa did his job. And it's one of those that at the end of the day, the Railcats get a hit, get a double, bunt it over, and you end up winning the game 1-0.
My heart sings for Bunting being successful.
Yes. I actually had more of a discussion with the fan, and there was one game where the Railcats hit a double and it was late in the game, and he was like, I don't understand why they're bunting the ball over. I'm like, well, now you have 2 opportunities to get the guy in to either take the lead or tie the game up when your offense isn't doing anything. The small ball works majority of the time the way you want it to, but it doesn't work all the time.
It's a time and place situation.
It's time and place, right? We're
easy, boys, easy.
Well, I know Ryan over there. He's like, he's got the analytics and home runs, and I'm saying like, okay, get the first, steal second, butt him over the third, and then come home. Like
it works more often for Gary because I think bunting is good. My issue historically with bunting, at least not historically, recently, has been that so much bunting is happening in like the stupid extra innings with the ghost runner. And everyone's like, we need more excitement. Put that guy on second, shorter games. And then the excitement they get is like sack bunts and sack flies. I'm like, go work, everybody. But that's a different issue. I'll work that out in therapy, or I won't.
I mean, really, they should be making extra innings X-rated for that reason alone. There's nothing sexier than a nice bunt.
I mean, I like a bunt. I do. I hate
nice
a bunt. I hate a bunt at the wrong time. Nothing drives me more insane than watching somebody like just bunt someone over in a situation where I'm like, what are we doing? That has been happening less, though, to be fair. So, to our point, I don't even know sometimes where to begin with Gary. And I know we kind of just talked about it, so I'm trying to like figure out the best way to rehash some things without it being the same thing over and over. But when it comes to like what needs to be done, it feels sometimes like it's such a long list. I don't even know where to begin with it. But like moments like this where some things are working, you start to see kind of what the vision is. So here's what I'll go with. While they've played well over the past several games, what is still, even now, like even during these games, been like hurting the team? And it's like, okay, even when the plan is being executed appropriately, this is still a weakness. Has anything stood out? Because it's a unique opportunity to see a bad team win. I was a Phillies fan during the last decade, so I saw a lot of losing. And I remember there were streaks where they'd win 6 in a row, and I'm like, wow, our bullpen's still giving up 5 runs a game, but we're just haven't been winning. Good God. So, I mean, have you noticed any of that during this experience, or have you just been soaking it in?
It's the same issue that it's been offensively. Like, obviously, the pitching staff has turned a corner in these past 4 games. And the 1-6-3 game where Jacob Bockley hits it inside the park home run against Symington, it couldn't see the ball, and he missed it 20 feet to the right of him. Most of the time, it's the offense will just score a handful of runs, and that'll be it. And we're basing off of singles, sometimes doubles, hardly triples. You'll get your occasional home runs in there from Rincon. I know you had Howard Rodriguez, who was playing with the Black Sox, so there was like no statistics on him at all, and he was brought in because of visa issues, and he hits a bomb to left field to start it out. His first hit, it was the first pitch of the game. That just kind of started, but I mean, you score 4 runs in a game that you kind of started out a little bit hot. I mean, that you're averaging 3 to 4 runs a game in this win streak, but most of the time you're looking at 2 to 1 runs a game, and your pitching staff's giving up 5 or 6, 7. Like there are upper echelons of ERA is almost up to 6. And it's one of those like this is the American Association is kind of leaning more towards a hitters league, and if your pitching staff's not the best, it's mediocre. But when your offense is mediocre and below, you're not going to win much games because your pitching staff's going to give up more runs. I think that's been the biggest issue is the offense is it's there, but it's not. They don't build off the momentum as much because a lot of the times it's singles that ground into double plays, or it's singles, doubles, and it's you get a double play to you line out to the shortstop and you get picked off at second. It's a lot of those in between. The one big thing that I would say, getting away from the negatives from the Railcats, is their defense has been outstanding this year. Watching this series alone, Jose Contreras has shown how he can play first. But it's going to be hard for Lamar once they go back to Lincoln, because Valera is normally that first baseman. He plays a really good first base as well defensively, but Jose's been showing that he can pick anything out of the dirt, and it's just been great to watch. They're just defensively, they've been a really good team this year, even though it may not necessarily show in the statistics behind it, but watching the games themselves, they've turned really good, outfield plays into really good double plays, and going off of that aspect. But I really, it's the offense is the pitching. You're going to go through your ups and downs, but when your offense is more consistent, that's when you'll win more games than not.
I could see that. It's one of those things where it's like I sorted everything by like the position the guys play. And guys are really a lot of guys who are at the bottom of the league by their position offensively. It's a little stunning. I didn't realize, I guess, the situation. I knew it wasn't good, but like as I've dug into the numbers since our conversation to now, I've been digging into it a lot, and I'm like, like it's really a tough scenario here. And I don't have anything else on that one. I know yours, like, yes, it is. Thank you, Ryan. But
Captain Obvious strikes again.
I'm like, I'm looking because I'm like Diaz is really good, and I look, I'm like, well, he's still hitting 245. Damn.
A lot of the issue is like there's some players that will just swing at everything and strike out. Like it's just how it is. But a lot of these, like a Cooper Edwards, who we just picked up, he's striking out 3 times at 15 at bats, but like this series, he's hit the ball super hard and wasn't rewarded for it. A lot of times these balls are hit and they're hit to people. It's not like a blooper over or a hard shot up the middle. It's a lot of times it's these really good hits, and it's just like, oh, well, the wind's blowing in today and it's not going to go very far, or you're going to line it out to the second base. And even the first game in the series, they were swinging at the first pitch, at like first, second pitch, and they're not seeing the ball enough or taking it the other way or taking it the way the ball's coming in instead of building that account and seeing more pitches. They're so aggressive. I would say that the offense is more aggressive than not, and it leads them into situations where they're not successful.
And that seems like a weird strategy, like team-wide, because you would think if you're a team who, just with some self-awareness, tends to be a little bit outgunned in a league that does sometimes have issues with depth, you would think it would be to your benefit to sort of work the pitch count as much as possible on a daily basis. Like even if it doesn't pay off day one, maybe it pays off in the series. And it does seem like sometimes that's not even remotely a thought. Like and maybe it is a bunch of guys who they just hit better by swinging early in the count, and you got to do what gives you the best chance. But it seems strange. I mean, has this been an ongoing thing, or is this specific to like this team?
They have a team total 92 walks, which is dead last in the league.
Yeah, wow.
And everyone at Fargo Moorhead's at 119. Like they don't take enough walks. And like I said, when you get into the slugging percentage, they've improved a little bit in the slugging percentage, but they're still.
It's 358. That's pretty.
Yeah. It's 10th in the league, and your on base percentage. On base percentage is 295.
Right.
Like that's your biggest. Everyone else is 300, and you're 295. Like you're just not getting on base, and so when you factor in a pitching staff that is inconsistent in innings, I wouldn't like inconsistent in innings, not so much like games in general. That it doesn't lead to successful games because they can't battle back and forth. Like if your team gives up 3 runs in this inning, it's going to take them 2, 3, 4 innings to get 1 run back versus getting 2 runs in 2 innings. There's no battling back and forth. So I think that's why like you look at the pitching staff like, oh, that's a little rough, but there's no push and pull with the offense because it's either they're on or they're off.
Okay. I follow.
Let's see. Yeah, that's just like a little bit odd to me just because I look at the roster here and they're all fairly experienced guys. They're fairly older guys. You think they would have some sort of plate discipline kind of already baked in there. Is it just like they're not used to this level or that they're pressing or something?
I think that the way, Lamar Rogers has changed the profile of the team from a very patient small ball to take the pitches when you get them to a more aggressive, what you would see in a typical major league team now is someone that you're going to have a handful of players that have some speed that can hit for contact, but majority of them are going to be able to hit for power. And that's what he's kind of tried to get to. And I just don't think the power numbers outside of like Rincon has been there for that aspect. I mean, a lot of times is Rincon's getting home runs, but he's not getting more RBIs than just one because there's no one on base in front of him. So when you're having a guy that's going to be batting at 200 to 220 and hitting your 10, 11 home runs, but you look at his RBIs and he has like 20, that just means he's not getting that. The people in front of him aren't getting on base.
Yeah, and this sort of brings me to two things that I guess occurred to me, which is rules across the board too, or things to consider across the board. Because it's easy to say walking is important and take pitches, but I do think it's partially the issue of when you don't have protection in your lineup and you don't have power generated in your lineup, guys can attack the zone. So guys are going to be able to pitch aggressively and try to get ahead. And generally speaking, it's not a group of guys who hit well behind in the count. So it is something where, if you want guys taking pitches up there, you're going to have a lot of guys getting to 0-1, 1-2 counts. And all of a sudden, you're not going to like the result of that one either. So I'm also kind of talking myself out of it, or at least trying to be fair in that. But the other one to consider too is this is one we see across the board with indie ball. Everybody wants to be the modern major league team, which is power, which is velocity. And what we're learning is that works great if you have the talent pool to do that. And if you have most of those guys who have the power or have the velocity are getting picked up in affiliated ball for the most part. So guys are trying to replicate that. They're trying to get guys throwing high fastballs, and they're still a couple years behind on that development. But that's a different conversation entirely. Or you're trying to get guys who are just, home run guys and power guys, and they're having to, maybe do a step below that because of what's available. And that just is not going to give you the same result. So I think that it must be a convergence of all this stuff because I don't know. I get him wanting to do that, but I am also like, damn.
But you also look at the teams that are successful though, and how much are they doing that? How much is it just adapt to what you have available to you, understand what lane you have to be in?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I am looking that up right now. when it comes to it.
Because even to a certain
Cleveland's the
extent,
top
that's
power team, but
Yeah, that was going to be my Cleburne would be if you're wanting to mold a team. If Lamar Rogers wants to mold a team that way, he needs to be looking at Cleburne because they do have the power. They do have speed. I think their pitching is a little bit in and out, but they also have players that play to their field.
and also the staff that they have too. I mean, when you have Pete Incaviglia as your manager, you have Billy Horn, a guy people like playing for. You have Brooks Carey, a guy that's been around as well. Those are all guys that are excellent recruiters and are going to draw people in. So yeah, it's obviously not a great setup in Cleveland just because or Cleburne rather, because you're so far away from everything and it's hot as hell on a turf field that makes it feel like, you're walking on the sun while you're playing a game. If you're going to work every day and you're like, yeah, I like the guys I'm around though, and they have a track record of being successful both in the areas I care about, i.e. getting signed, and B, in putting up wins, that's a big appeal. That's a nice draw to have. And even more so, they've all been around this for a while. I mean, how long's Pete been doing this for? Since 07, 08? Christ knows. Brooks has been doing it for a while too, and same thing with Billy. All these guys have connections. They all know people. So they're able to get in there and get these guys. And that's just kind of an added benefit there. And that's, I think, the real critical thing here is that if you know where to get guys from and everybody's like, yeah, if I'm going to let a guy go, I'm going to give him a call first to see if they want him, if they can do something with the guy. That's going to give you a leg up on everybody else.
And I think that's Lamar's behind that 8 ball just because it's really his third year in the league. If you want to look at his first year, you can really say this is his second year in the league because really he came in at March and the season started 2 months later. So it's like one of those, he didn't get the adaptation, the options. Now he's starting to figure out how to build those connections. And a lot of the connections that he has this year is from his time in the Houston Astros organization. He's pulling a lot of those players. And then on top of that, those players are pulling players that they knew that they played with. So I think it's about still trying to build those connections. And it's just not the player connections aren't adding themselves to the situation.
Because I mean, I'll level with you. The question I'm tiptoeing at this point and trying to figure it out if it's worth asking, because I might just be seeing this wrong, is I feel like a lot of things you talk about come back to Lamar on this, and I'm sure he is not. I'm sure there's things behind him that are causing things as well. But it's it does feel like it's a recruitment issue. It feels like it's a strategy issue, and I'm like, well, damn, that's on the manager side typically. So you think it is more of a product of the situation, or he's just struggling as he's still sort of somewhat new to the indie ball scene, or what's your observation as somebody who's seeing this thing day in, day out?
I really think it's just trying to make the connections and making them work and seeing what connections, he's a guy that wants affiliated experience. He wants that professional atmosphere. I just think that he's so gung-ho on grabbing those people that have played in triple or double A, and they may not necessarily be what is actually needed. Maybe, starting the conversation of trying to pull people from different leagues, the Pioneer League or the Frontier League, maybe trying to get someone from the Atlantic League, maybe building that reputation inside of the leagues, and then you can maybe sprinkle out to the affiliate experience. I just think that bringing everyone in that has some kind of affiliate experience and that have been playing affiliate ball for so long really hasn't played out the way we've expected. And could be just the players maybe thinking, oh, I played an affiliate ball, this should be easy for me, and it's not coming easy to them. And maybe it's just an adjustment period for them themselves. But again, I mean, it's a professional baseball league. You should have that competitive to be better.
Yeah. On the topic of staff, that's the one thing I do notice. I look across the whole Railcat staff, and I don't see a lot of guys that have really any indie ball experience across the board there. So I do wonder on a certain level, would it help to just bring in a guy that has experience that's been around before and knows like, okay, this is how we have to go about recruiting guys. This is what we need to look for. This is what we do in season. Like I hate to like dumb it down to be like, you need a guy that can give him a crash course and learn quickly. I also look at a lot of other second year managers that kind of sort of figure it out. And like, for me, almost the poster child of it is like a Jared Lemieux in Lake Erie, where year one was not good. But we always say first year, you never judge a manager off of because that's a very tough year to get any sort of kind of result on. But year two, now we're seeing Lake Erie's surprising a lot of people. They're putting together a really solid season. Whether they make the playoffs or not, we don't really know. Frontier League, obviously, different playoff setup, and the league as a whole is a much different setup there. But he was around indie ball for a while as a pitching coach. He's in go with a lot of people that have the connections and whatnot. So maybe not a 1-for-1, but he's a guy that, yeah, he's a second year guy. He has connections and he figured it out. So maybe bringing in a guy that has been around a while, does have those connections, and can kind of help execute the plan that Lamar wants to run would be beneficial to this team.
I would say that one guy would be, or I should say probably two guys, would be Olivier Basabe and Jacob Bockley. They've both been around for a couple years. I just think that Bockley hasn't, he isn't utilized as much as I think he should be, being a left-handed bat, and there's only 3 people on this team that's left-handed.
Okay.
It's one of those, he can be good when you need him to. He's not gonna be as consistent, which is a forte of what we see through the roster in general. No one's ever really that consistent, besides like Marcos Gonzalez and Olivier Basabe, Basabe didn't really have the best series. He went from like a 298 down to a 268, I think, right now. Mm-hmm. So he didn't have the quote unquote best. But I think those would be the 2 veteran guys that have played in indie ball, or at least in the American Association, that would have those years. Yeah,
I'm more or less looking to add a guy to the coaching staff and try and help with that. And that's really where I think is the key there. I don't necessarily think you need indie ball guys. You just need guys that know what to look for in an indie ball player. And I don't know if that's there right now.
Do they have a baseball operations person? I feel like they don't. You're right.
They don't.
No?
They don't. Anthony, who's the GM, is just strictly like front office, like just paperwork, visas,
off the field issue,
office deals, that running that portion of it. So there's no one that runs like an operations side of it.
Interesting. Okay. I do see, and of course, easy for me to say because it's this thing that I specialize in, but like I always see a value in that because it's a baseball focused person, because the GM's also focused on the damn business. So like, it's a baseball focused person who can be somebody who's not on a bus for long stretches of time, somebody who doesn't need to worry about the clubhouse dynamics as much and managing that day to day, who can step back, have a short list at all times of guys to reach out to, who can be managers have their hands full, who can be out there during BP, just shaking hands, talking to people behind the cage, like making those connections. And I wonder how much it holds Lamar back at times that he's doing everything. He's not fighting with one hand tied behind his back, but it's more fighting while juggling, I feel like.
And a lot of the players that have been released so far really don't have a connection to Lamar. And it's one of those that like, I'm just going to use him, for example, even though he's improved a little bit, would be like a Franklin Perez, who was a number 3 prospect of baseball, was traded from Houston to Detroit for Verlander, basically. Like that was like a big name person, but like he hasn't produced the well because with the injury. And it's just one of those, like, you've given people shorter leashes for less, but you're giving people longer leashes because you just had that connection to them. Like a Nick Panazzi, who played with Kansas City. His last game, he wasn't necessarily the best, but like you could see the frustration on his face and in his game. but it was just like he pitched okay, but then he gets cut, and then it's just like Franklin Perez goes out there and he gives up, his there's just 1 inning and 3 earned runs on 3 hits and 2 walks. And it's just like, oh, this guy does it consistently. Let's just keep him on the team.
That's interesting. Okay. Now that kind of clarified a lot of things in my mind. And I mean, from a lot of angles, that's another thing I think is important for having a baseball ops person, where like somebody who can also be even the bad guy at times is like useful, man. I don't know. I think it's getting a lot from Lamar. This whole situation is like, damn, yeah, I can see this being with all the other just difficulties that come with, trying to win in Gary. Like, it's just, I mean, it's just a lot, man. Okay. Sorry, Nick, do you have thoughts here? I'm just sort of processing it and going, wow, that makes sense.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like I normally, like my big thing, like there's no like baseball up intern, no anything like that. It's just straight up not like, that's just very odd. Normally you'd have at least a couple interns or something there. So like asking Lamar and 3 other coaches to do all of this work is a fairly big ask. Like he should be running point on it, don't get me mistaken. But normally you have a baseball ops guy.
Yeah, he's not doing it alone.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just that's the way Lamar wants to run it. If he just wants to do it himself, because I mean I've kind of asked him like analytics portion of like, where do you get your analytic guy? He goes, yeah, I got my own one. Like he just kind of very like, it seems like it's I do it myself and I'm the one that makes the decision. So like it is what it is. Like I'm just the one that's going to run it. And it could just be maybe he can just think to himself that he can do it and eventually get to a point to where it's like, I may need some help. I just don't think he's feeling that pressure yet, because you have changed. You've changed owners. The team really hasn't been successful for a handful of years. People are still going to the games. I think that the city of Gary is more concerned about keeping the city alive and then trying to revamp the stadium before they care about the product on the field.
No, that makes sense. I get that.
Yeah,
like I'm sure that's ownership's perspective on it too. How has the new ownership been? Like from what you've seen, are they spending? Or are they kind of still like, what are we doing?
So last year when Joe took over, saw him at almost every game. I haven't seen him at one game this year. I know he's based out of New York. I don't know. When actually listening to Wednesday's game, the commissioner Josh Schaub was on with Andrew Mild, and they kind of had a hot mic going a little bit, and he was asking Andrew was asking Josh like, "Hey, when are you coming to Gary?" And he goes, "Well, when Joe gets there." So like Joe hasn't been there since the beginning of the year. It's like the preseason game for like I think they call it Cats and Cocktail, where they do with the season ticket holders and that kind of stuff. The
mixer type event.
The mixer thing. He hasn't been there since. Now, granted, like I said, I don't know. I mean, I think he runs his own business, so obviously he'd probably be caught up with that. Maybe later on the summer he can come back. But so a lot of getting more clarity like on the stadium themselves. So like the city of Gary owns the stadium and everything, just 100% of it. So obviously Joe's probably just funding the baseball side of things. So I don't know how much he really wants to be like involved if he can't, if he's not really turning a profit or like can't make updates to the stadium himself. So it's just one of those, like, I don't know what the game plan is necessarily.
Yeah. How the operation is.
Yeah.
Like,
hey man, if you want to feel like he should be around more, but you're like, well, he's got his own business or whatever, and you're trying to see it that way, we'll say like, I mean, Gary, the team's his business too, so it's like, if you can feel justified in that if you want to feel that way, that he should be around more. Because I'm like, it feels like there's more. I mean, I don't know what other businesses are, but I'm like, there's a lot of people wrapped up in this, man. Like,
and then that's the thing is like, if I'm gonna take if I have enough money to own a baseball team, no matter what level you're at, just being a sports fan in general, knowing that I own a team, I figured I would be there more times than not.
yeah, and there's a reason that I would also, if I were to own a team someday, I would honestly try to hold off until I'm at a point where I don't need to think about, like, oh God, what's the bottom line on this? Like, get to a point where it's like, I don't care if we make or lose money. Like, let's just get wild with it and just have the fun of being an owner on a team and not like the business operator or whatever. Like, view it how you want.
At the very least, you need the personnel in place that you trust to operate it the way you need to. Like, that's the thing. I'm not
no Veronicas.
Exactly. That's the thing, though. Like, I'm not overly concerned about an owner not showing up, but I am concerned about an owner that doesn't really know what the hell they're doing and doesn't really show any interest in, learning or getting the people that know what they're doing, right? Like, it's one thing if you have ownership that says, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but I bought it because, I want to own a sports team. And these guys have been successful, so I went out and I just paid more than what they're paying the guy and brought in whoever made them work. That's one strategy, and not great because there's context behind every successful and unsuccessful, I guess, venture. But still, I'm all right with that. But to not be around and not really be managing the investment, or at least trying to improve what's there, does give me some pause.
No, I do have to say, Anthony does have like the in-game experience running like a well-oiled machine. So like, I don't think he really has to worry about, like the day-to-day operations of how the game itself is running. So it's one of those, like, he doesn't have to be there micromanaging it.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're going almost halfway into the season. It would be nice to see him at least one time, and we haven't seen him one time in a game yet. It's just one of those, like, just the common courtesy of.
Yeah, it'd be nice to make your presence known that, like, hey, I didn't just forget about this.
And it's not even like so much like you want to see, like, the commissioner wants to come talk to you at a baseball game.
Yeah.
And it seems like Josh is more proactive in trying to get things done.
Yeah.
And I know with
their face-to-face meeting outside just the one ownership meeting.
With his developmental plans, Gary fits that mold, and the team's already there. Like, just around the stadium in general, like if you go there in right field, there's a building that used to have like a restaurant in it that doesn't have anything in it anymore, that uses a conference room for some stuff. Like, that's an investment they could use for. There's areas around that they could be investing in, and Gary's trying to flip the script, and it's starting because there's people that have owned properties that are making a crap ton of money now because they're just starting to flip it. It's just gotten to a point to where everything's so ran down, they're just trying to flip it. I think it's a development portion of it. I think Josh would probably really want to get to Joe about, and like, hey, what can we do to improve this? But I really think,
how can we capitalize on this new redevelopment that's about to occur?
Yeah, and I think it's just one of those that maybe Josh should be more talking to the mayor of the city than Joe. But again, I don't.
Yeah, at the same point in time, like, you don't want to overstep your bounds. It is still technically the ownership's job.
Yeah,
you just want to check in and be like, hey, this is what we're thinking. This is what our goal is. Let's make sure we're aligned on this and that we both agree where we're heading.
Sorry, I'm just thinking that through. I just learned a lot about that. We spent so much time looking from the outside in. It's interesting to
really the question I would love to know is, what's their operating budget like? Like, this is the unsexy part of the conversation, but that's honestly the most important part of it. It's like, if they because that changes the whole context. It changes from, do you want to be running this without a baseball ops department, or is it that you have to run it without a baseball ops department?
I think it's more of that they can't.
Okay.
Versus that they don't want to.
That's a much different situation now.
I know that a lot of, now I don't know much this year, but I know last year and the years before, a lot of the staff members are volunteer. Like, they're just volunteer retired people, or like young high school kids that are just trying to get into the thing. They really push the internships, which is understandable.
Yeah, I mean, everybody does.
It's just
sure.
I just think that gets pushed on it more times than not. So I just don't think they have the necessary funding for that. And at that point, do you put the funding into it to try to improve the team when in years that it really hasn't made much improvement? So I don't know. You're trying to balance the pros and cons behind it. Like, you're going to have to build baseball operations. You're going to have to go to someone like, hey, you want to do this for free? And it's probably going to be free for the next 3-4 years until we can get this thing going.
I mean, like, honestly, here's the thing. I wonder about that because, I mean, how many guys have we had on this show that are basically stat interns that have more or less built the whole department that they now run, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, how much was there when Jack got into Joliet? How much was there when Nate Asher got into Lake Erie, right? So, I mean, like, there's guys that are willing to do it, but you obviously can't just let a college kid do it on his own. He needs some sort of guidance to help him with it, if for no other reason than just, like, it's hard to know where to start and, like, what boundaries you should be playing in.
Mm-hmm. Huh. That's also interesting. That's not necessarily a choice. Okay. That also puts it into context. And I get we're a bit in the weeds here, so we can back off because we have a very important conversation about promotions that we should have at some point here. Because I've gotten everybody on board with following me into this mess.
I didn't come up with anything, so y'all are on your own there.
Dude, that's fine because
I more or less saw it as more work than I wanted to do. So
I was like, "Ooh, I got homework."
See, there's two attitudes in life. And meanwhile, I'm the one. I'll admit that I definitely started that conversation. I threw it out there because I had a couple on deck. I was like, I should pop these during an episode.
Now, to be fair, I was watching the game and I told my wife, I said, I got to go in about an hour early because I got to look up some promotions. But that's beside the point.
I mean, it's fine. We're prepared, more prepared than we are. I guess last thoughts. I mean, so our diagnosis at this point, if we're doing an autopsy on what's happening here, is that they could use some help, and whether that's in a lot of ways, and it's also very obvious to say, but it's more like probably some operations help on the baseball side, and that might also look like financial help. But good Lord, can't they all use that, every indie ball team? But
because I mean, like, I'm trying to figure out their economics right now because I'm rolling with about a $15 on average ticket price with roughly 2,800 games. They're pulling in just about 40 G's a game here, so I'm trying to do some math.
Hey, how accurate we feeling that attendance is there, though, Kyle?
See, I don't know how to, because if I'm being honest, there's sometimes that we go to the game, like so I have family season passes, right? Mm-hmm. So I get 5 tickets, general admission, and the person that's scanning will either scan 1 ticket or it'll scan, like, me and my wife will go, so like there's the minimum of 2, or my family will go. So like they'll either scan 1 ticket or they'll scan all 5 tickets. So it's like, I don't necessarily know. I would say the numbers probably are a little bit inflated, but I wouldn't say they're super inflated.
Grossly inflated. Okay,
that's fairly accurate.
They really push the suites. Okay. So the company outings and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that you don't necessarily see, like, on the field itself or in the stands themselves, just because most of them are up in a group outing session.
Got it.
All right. Okay. So I think we could say about 40 or so a game is fair for gate revenue.
Yeah, I mean,
that's decent.
I mean, it's honestly better than a lot of other teams. So it's just a question of how is that money being spent. I mean, I don't know what the lease looks like, but they're not owning the stadium, making payments on it then.
Yeah.
What a weird arrangement. I don't know. That's interesting.
We're pulling in nearly $2 million in gate revenue then.
I know, but also let's say, how big is that? What's the capacity on that again? I'm sorry, I could look that up, Kyle. I'm just using
this is where the season passes for families is $250 a year.
Okay.
That's for 5 tickets, and you can make that up in a week.
Right.
Realistically, like, it's just one of those. Outside of, even general admission season packs for one person is $100.
Because they're figuring they're going to get you on the
capacity on the thing is 62. By the way. That's
So
what
it's
you're
probably costing 20 to 25 a night to keep that thing open.
okay. So they're still clearing about 15 a night though.
Yeah,
But that's
and
you
that's
include the
before
staff
you
in there.
include full-time staff. It does include full-time staff in that number, I don't think,
Okay, so
in my guess. But you just said there's not. I don't know. It's not that much full-time staff, at least compared to others. Sorry,
yeah.
we're really in the weeds here.
We're both going on this like, okay, well, how much are they
clearing?
clearing here? We want to know how much if they're being cheap or if they're
I
actually broke.
wish I had
this.
those numbers, but I
Yeah.
don't have those numbers, and I don't think I'll ever get those numbers.
If we don't cut this off in about 5 minutes, an hour from now, Nick and I are going to be doing the math on can we buy this team? Like this is where this goes, just so
Really?
everybody's
All right.
clear.
So it's 750,000 they're clearing a year here after stadium operations. If you assume that everybody in that front office is making about between 45 and 55 a year, how much?
Nick, if you and I do every job in the ballpark, that's going to help out our bottom line.
Interns.
Look, we have a third employee here, but yeah, you're going to be an intern.
We're like, technically speaking, you're gonna get a lot of college credit here.
Yeah.
Also, we're
like,
not affiliated with any colleges, so you will get no credit. But think about the experience.
Get ready to learn paid and experience, buddy.
Nice. So now that we're talking about unpaid interns who are getting experience for their hard work, let's talk about what those suckers have been asked to run, because I've been watching a lot of bad promos happening. I've been watching a lot of cringy things go down, and it's reminding me of a couple of things that I've witnessed now, and I'll be man enough to admit up front, I got you both on board with bringing some promos, and I also had some people from Instagram suggest some things to discuss as best and worst promos because I had things in mind already. So I will own that. I basically loaded the deck for myself here, but I just thought it a little bit away from where I knew we'd be in the weeds on Gary. So I figure a little bit something lighthearted before we let you go. And then Nick and I jump back into deep diving into like some Pioneer League chaos or something just unhinged. So I will, since you were the guest, did you have anything that you ran into where you're like, oh, this one's out there?
I have 3 of them.
Yes.
The one that was already on top of my head. The second one was just because it was a different sport, and the third one I kind of did a little bit digging, but not too crazy. The night of the disco demolition for the Chicago White Sox with Mike Vick.
Yeah.
That having the 98-cent promotion of admission, and then expecting 40,000 fans and having close to 60,000 destroy the field and having to forfeit a doubleheader game. And classic one. My second one would probably be the Chicago Blackhawks giving out hard hats in 2009, and Jonathan Taves scored what would have been his first career hat trick. So everyone's throwing hard hats on the ice instead of just normal hats, and the goal got called back. So you had more fans that were pissed off about that, and then they ended up scoring, so they threw more. So you just had a rink full of hard hats on the ground. So that seems like a smart one.
That's awesome.
And then that's last
a great
one,
call, by the way, from you to that's a good dig up. I like that. That's like right in the wheelhouse of like, this is fine. I mean, maybe a little risky. What are the odds people throw a hard hat and then that exact scenario happens in the one sport where people are chucking hats out there,
throwing everything out?
I love it. The universe was like, this is my opportunity for chaos.
I mean, the Rangers used to do puck giveaway day.
Yeah,
they give you the puck, and back in the day, they used to give it to you on the way in. Yeah. So you'd get a bad call, and then you just see pucks come flying down.
Dude, no more hard objects at Philly sporting events, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, the Rangers also did, because I know this for a while. I had this stick as a curtain rod. They gave away sticks at the end of some event. I don't even remember what it was, but they gave them away at the very end. But you got a street hockey stick from them. They'll
occasionally do a mini bat in Philly still, but they'll give it to kids only. So you have to like take it from a kid to if you want to throw it. So that kind of deters some things.
That's business as usual in Philly.
Well, say what you will about Philly, but it polices itself, because if you take a bat from a kid, the person who's going to throw the bat they're holding will then just beat you with it instead, and then it keeps people from throwing stuff. So there you go.
Yeah, well, then you still have a bat to throw.
With that said, Kyle, back to you.
The last one I'll have to go before the Hagerstown Suns, the pre-planned funeral night. where it was a pre-planned funeral night. One lucky fan would win a package of $6,500 to go towards a casket, embalming, and a funeral home and a death certificate.
That's practical. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's my turn now because my friend, I got to tell you, the number one thing I was going to come with today is guess who has run a funeral giveaway? This guy.
I was going to say. Yeah.
Yep. So basically, I inherited that. I was not the one mainly in charge of it. My boss was kind enough, shout out Kevin Linton in Wilmington, to be like, I will not make this your problem solely. But he had the deal with, we were community affairs, so this wasn't completely out of line, but we had the deal with the local funeral home that you could submit the reason why you should win this free funeral. Now, the first year I think it was that they did it, it did not go well. It was roasted on Facebook. It was tough. It was a tough scene.
You and the Facebook, just the grudge match of the century.
It was brutal. But I was not involved in that one. That was not me. I was not there for that. So then that's why it goes to the new corporate communications person. Not corporate communication, wasn't community affairs there that year. And they were like, hey, like, you can't make it any worse than it was. Let's be honest here. And so we had to like fully shift the angle of it to like, you don't win it. We can't use the word win a funeral anymore. We're out on that thing because that did not play. So it was like, you will receive it and you don't tell us, like, we changed the phrasing on it being like, tell us your story. And like one person who we like whatever phrased it as, and then like we literally, and here's where it was bold. And I was like, we might get something here. This could go badly. We sent like hand signed, all of them for the record, letters to like hospice care and nursing homes and hospitals. Cause like, that's where dying people are. And we're like, hey, because also people weren't like trying to win it, which is a tough one for like the sponsor also. So it's like, we do need to find people to do it. And I think it went fine. I was honestly not there the day of the giveaway, which is kind of funny, but like it was a nice story. It was a family in need and it was like, it went really well, but bro, there were some tense days. There was a lot of hand signed letters while sweating profusely about it. Like that is so funny you mentioned that one. Cause like you really need to think about everything you say on that thing. Like, whew, buddy, war flashbacks on that. I don't think I've ever told that one on this podcast, though.
It is a new one. I'll say that. I'm half surprised you didn't have an intern dig through like home ownership records. Let's see, they bought this house 50 years ago. They got to be near the end of the line.
I believe we did have an intern find every hospice place, by the way. Like, so that was some poor intern's job was digging up every hospice care location in Delaware. That was a little bit of a like, hey, Ryan, good job one. So I will air out the time I accidentally gave tickets to almost the entire stadium, which was our heritage nights were not going well. So we decided that they were kind of half-assed. Like it was tough to like really get a good theme going other than being like, here's some Polish music. And like, we're doing kielbasi and like the stand and whatever else. And like, we had a Polish flag around. So,
anti-Italian American discrimination,
buddy. No,
warned us about this.
Wait. Because our GM was like, hey, like we need to lean in on this more. And I was like, I got some ideas. Like, hell, they were like, Ryan, you're creative and willing to get fired. So sure. And I was like, here's what we'll do. We'll split the stadium up into like 9 parts. And like every section is like grouped to like a player. And together you guys are representing insert place within Italy, like Naples or whatever it is. Right. And when your player, like every time the player comes up, there's a little fun fact on the board about that part of Italy, whatever. And if your guy scores, like, then you all like celebrate together and like everybody in that little area gets a free ticket to another game. I was big on free tickets because people come in and spend money. Boom.
I feel like people listen, they know you don't care about giving away tickets.
Worst offense on the planet. Like they were awful that year, and they scored 8 runs in the first inning. 8 different dudes scored.
Oh,
and I was just saying
this one.
Yep,
I remember hearing this. Yep.
Yeah, and they just were looking at you like,
I realized I had to at least throw that one back out there in case it seemed like I was like, oh, I did such a good job giving away a funeral, which also is not a sentence I really should be putting out in the world. But congratulations, you just won a funeral as you like kill somebody.
sounds like something you saw on the rugby pitch.
Oh no. Well, but yeah, that's kind of where that ended up going. And about probably 2,000 free tickets later, the first inning ended. So that was good. That was good. Good. It's good. It's good. That was the last time I got to run Heritage Night, I'll tell you that much. Just stress eating a meatball sub on the side of the concourse.
Slowly backs out. Bitch run comes across, go, guys, bad news. I gotta go.
Smooth as Mario mustache, pulls down a little Mario hat.
This is coming out of the paycheck we're not paying you for.
Yeah, I know. And that's gonna come out of my stipend.
Slinks down Mario pipe.
That was not the Mario noise, but it's all I had.
Yeah, it's fair.
Nick, did you have anything you want to throw in there?
Nothing.
We should at some point do like top promos of the year, but that's a future idea.
Well, that sounds like a lot of work, more work than I'm going to put in.
I will say, if a certain team wanted to do it, I'm not going to name names, say they want to do a knockout cancer night. I think it's a great idea. I would suggest not doing it on Juneteenth. That's a tough look from the weekend or week, whatever it was. Yeah.
Yesterday. So it was literally yesterday.
Gentle suggestion. Maybe don't do that. It makes it look like you don't have a calendar or a sense of history.
Probably the second half of that.
It might be that, yeah. Oh, God. Well, I think this has gone about as poorly as it could. And I think that's good for me. Honestly, this is so much better having a guest. We haven't had a guest in a little bit. And I think that's really great. And somebody who's as in the weeds as we are, which is always good for us.
It's always fun being in the weeds. So it's the fun of being straightforward.
Here's my last scary thing, and then I'll let Nick sloppily try to get out of this interview and transition back into a podcast we haven't recorded yet. I will say it would not happen because that's not how contracts work, but I would love to see what Brady Salisbury, who he just got over 200 win mark in a little over 2 seasons. I would love to see what he would do with Gary. But
oh my God,
resources. But we also know he can work with limited resources. We did learn that last year. So I'm
telling you, there's a couple of guys that I genuinely believe if we were to add them to the Gary staff are guys that have had tough ownership situations, although I don't think that's the case here, and have worked in less than ideal circumstances that coming to Gary, they could do a lot of good with. And could really shape Lamar into a very, very strong manager in this league. There's a couple of guys I have in mind. So,
can't believe we're gonna have more episodes after this. After people just literally got to listen to us fixing an entire organization.
Who knows? God. Maybe it's gonna be at the end. Maybe it'll be in the beginning. Who knows?
It is unreal just the amount that we give back to the listener, or at least that we think we do.
Hey, they're free to click off whenever they'd like. They choose to stay. That's on them.
Listen, being on the other side of the conversation, the amount of work that you two put in is just outstanding.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I'm just being,
or it's a cry for help.
Well, that too. But I'm just saying, talking for almost close to 2 hours, and you guys haven't started. Like, right. As much as you may downplay yourselves, maybe that's just a ploy on your end. But
you plan things,
not plan things, but like downplay, like, oh, this podcast sucks, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I'm being honest. Like, the amount of work you guys do put in, it does show. So
I do appreciate that, especially from somebody who listens, because I do wonder sometimes if the listeners who then come on, I was one of them.
It's funny how that happens.
For me, you might be co-hosting this thing next, by the way, Kyle, so be ready. For me, I was always like, wow, like this is like, I'm like really excited to be on here because this was the first thing I listened to getting into indie ball. And then now, though, very quickly my perspective shifted to either everybody comes on here and they're excited because this is something they listen to, or because they are just like good Samaritans who are like, God, I need to at least try to fix this a little bit for them. So I'm open to either, and I'm appreciative of either regardless of the situation. But I do wonder at times. So it's nice to get that feedback from you, man, because I'm still very much like, good luck editing this, Nick. I think nobody's going to ever hear this, and that might be saving our career, but do your thing.
Now, granted, I when you start talking about other leagues, I'm like, okay, what am I looking at now? But like, it's still nonetheless of just the bantering back and forth and bringing everything full circle after going off the rails for 10 minutes and the little things that people don't understand.
They don't understand any of it.
Yeah.
Neither do I.
Yeah. Yeah. So
do your thing. How do you want to sign this off here, Nick? I mean, Kyle, you got right. He's got his own little, plug all the stuff. Yeah,
he gets back plugs.
Yeah, back.
Why is it like
plugs.
I've never listened to this podcast, let alone co-hosted it? Jesus.
This times when you promote from inside.
I'm an idiot.
It happens. Very, very simple, quick Railcats Talk, like the social media, wherever you're gonna find it, website, all that fun stuff. There's nothing too crazy about it. Just Railcats Talk.
Nice and simple, nice and easy.
I know. The mouthful of the Railcast Talk podcast, a little bit of mouthful. So I'm trying to rebrand it just the Railcast Talk.
No, not bad.
Honestly, that's probably the way to go. Because I was going to say, when I was doing the patchwork, I was like, Railcat Talk podcast. Say each syllable, so that way it doesn't just like fall out of your mouth.
And it's originally started as a podcast, but then I've expanded upon it. So I've tried to shorten it.
Short form daily video. Hi, you and me both, my guy.
I try.
Wait, film inside the truck again.
No, can't go back.
Give me lunch hour truck videos.
Honestly, that is close to where I'm at in life. Kyle, thanks, man. Appreciate you coming on. Hopefully this recording goes better than last time.
Yeah. I hope so too. Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
right.
No, thank you, Nick and Ryan, again for having me on and having me on basically back-to-back weeks and doing everything. Nick doing all the editing and trying to get everything going on and feeling like you broke a promise, which you didn't.
I still feel bad about it.
There's no need to feel bad. Crap happens. It's like technology. It always happens. So
fair enough.
Hopefully this doesn't go to waste. But
hey, and now you join the club that only has Jesse Scaglione in it, which is back-to-back weeks.
Yes.
Wow, that's true.
Yeah.
And who would have thought a podcast from Gary?
Just a podcast from Gary. I can see the billboards now. All right, Kyle. I'll see you, man. Thank you again.
You guys.
Thanks to Kyle for coming on board and talking Gary with us. We appreciate that. Love having him on. So, probably won't have him on for a third week in a row. That seems a little excessive, but
no, unless maybe if Gary hasn't lost,
if Gary keeps his winning streak up, yes, then we'll bring him back out again. We'll keep bringing him on until they lose.
Right. That seems fair.
This really is the only way we go about it. So you heard his plugs. You'll hear our plugs now. Ryan, toss your plugs in there because we had a good week and we got a lot of stuff we got to sort out for next week and the week after. Going to be busy next few weeks.
Yeah, man. Check out the Instagram, Indie Ball Nation, doing like daily, like 4 a day, just quick hit videos talking about what I have in each league. Check out podcast platforms, Indie Ball Nation, and YouTube. I'm kind of doing now that I'm doing these daily things, I'm kind of figuring out what exactly I want to use the podcast platforms and YouTube for. It used to be a lot of talking about what happened in the games. So now what? So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. Maybe I'll talk about Winnipeg trades and completely ruin the concept for our next episode.
Yeah, you think you should do that? I think you should do that. Then I can go ahead and start making videos where I just get up out of bed and maybe I'll film in bed. Just go. So let's look at the scores from last night.
Hey man, some people have to get to their big boy jobs. Not me, but some people.
I know, really. God. Oh God, am I gonna start getting up early again for these camps? Oh,
buddy, I'm waking up in 2.5 hours.
Don't even bother sleeping at that point.
It's bad. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about it.
And Indie Ball Pod on Twitter, Indie Ball Report, everywhere else. Stay tuned for stuff. Yeah, that's how we end this show.
It's beautiful.
And don't forget to finish your sentences by don't forget to play ball.